Nice to finally talk to you. Been looking forward to this for a while. How are you doing?
I'm great. Thank you, Shama. I mean, I've also been looking forward to this for a really long time, and I'm super excited to, have a conversation with you. Like, woohoo! Yeah.
Pleasure is really all mine. So just to start with, I know I have been stalking you for the past 3 days. Thank you for adding me to the WhatsApp. I've been seeing your runs, and there's a time that you were like, Nairobi is great, and I'm like, are you in Nairobi now?
I am actually in Nairobi, yeah. And I recently moved out here, so it's just been slightly over a month. So I'm kind of like still exploring this town, and it's big, it's beautiful. Most parts of it, all the parts that I've been in, like where I went yesterday, I'd never been before, and I was running, and I usually have this tendency to sort of like wander around, and I'm like, I'm always gonna find my way back. So I went down a new route yesterday, and it was so pretty. So yeah, I am enjoying my time in Nairobi.
So my first question would be like, are you like Superman or something? Because I was, as I said, I was talking you. I went down your LinkedIn. I've seen you've been in London. I've seen like at least like I think there was a US trip, and I'm like, so you travel a lot, or it just, or I just happened to come at a time when you're traveling a lot.
I mean, I see in the past couple of years I've been traveling a lot. So I am Ugandan, like grew up for most of my life in Uganda. And then in late 2022, I moved to the UK to do my master's degree in international development. I was in Nottingham at Nottingham Trent University. So I was, living in Nottingham, studying in Nottingham, and I was there for, 3 years. Not in Nottingham, but within the UK. And while there, I traveled around the UK, but also when I finished my degree in late 2024, I got an amazing job with a great organization called Seed Global Health. And I'm so lucky that it gives me opportunities to travel. So last year I went over to the US. I was going for my friend's wedding, interestingly, but I also went to the office in Boston, got to hang out with my colleagues who I always meet online because I'm a remote worker. And yeah, so I've moved around a lot, and now I am in Nairobi.
Wow. Okay. So that's 4 countries. Amazing. Like, I tell you like 3 other countries that you didn't call, I've not called so far in this conversation because I've heard 4 countries. Okay, yeah. So what other countries, please?
Yeah, I've also been to Northern Ireland, and then I've also been to, just most recently, I was in Ghana. So those are the countries that I might have skipped.
Okay, so your work sounds very, very fun. Yeah, because
Just
I
to
mean,
say, all this has not been for work. Like some of it has just been travel for pleasure, but to some of these places I've traveled for work. So, and I am privileged to do that. Oh, just one more country, South Africa as well.
aha, I knew there were 3 countries. I said three at first. I said three because I knew. Yeah. Okay, now, so I personally find that aspirational. So there's an aspirational quality added to the chat. So, if I glaze your eyes, if I flatter you too much, it's because I think that I want to be like you when I grow up. So,
Oh, you're so
yeah.
kind. Thank you, Shoma.
Okay, but in all of this, I think I was looking at your LinkedIn and, it's very open. I went through your post like down to a year back, the shared ones and everything. So, what is one fun fact about you that I wouldn't know going down your LinkedIn? Because I think I'm still going to go back.
Oh, let's see. What wouldn't you know about me from my LinkedIn? That
Mm-hmm.
I'm an outdoorsy person, that I've summited some mountains. And the first time I climbed a mountain, I was like, what were you thinking? Like, how dare you? And then I sort of like crawled my way to the top. And when I came back and I was out of the pain because I think I couldn't walk properly for like a week. And then after that, I was like, I think one of my neighbors had gone with another group for hiking, and somehow I saw the mountain they climbed, and I found myself going to her inbox and being like, tell me about that. And since then, I've sort of like been kind of chasing summits in a way. I mean, I've not hiked so much
Oh,
in the recent year, but it's something that I truly enjoy.
how many summits have you conquered? Because am I talking to a Kilimanjaro conqueror?
No, no, it's on my to-do list. So Kilimanjaro is on my to-do list. Mount Kenya is on my to-do list. Mount Rwenzori in Uganda is on my to-do list. So far, I've done the smaller mountains, but one of the highest mountains I've climbed is called Mount Sabinyo. It's in southwestern Uganda. Has three peaks, so you're kind of like going up, down, up to the summit, and then you have to come back the same way. And it's just one of those things. Like I feel like everyone should climb a mountain sometime in their life. It's just one of those things that puts you through so much, but also teaches you so much about
Yeah.
yourself.
Yeah. Oh, I see why you were interested in me talking about climbing a mountain. So, not to toot my own horn,
And you
but yeah,
said you ran to the hills as well. So I feel like, you probably understand a bit of this.
yeah, I do. So where I come from, Jos, and I speak about this place in almost every interview that I do because I'm very attached to places. Jos is a
Yeah.
mountainous region. It's on a dormant volcano, like millions and
Mm.
millions of years. So we have a lot of natural resources, and then the peaks are great. When I was a
Oh,
teenager, we
wow.
went on this thing called the Plateau Scheme. They just gave us a compass and a map, and they were like, find your way to the next camp. And so from 7 o'clock, they just give us like a plate of beans pottage and then bread and then I think some butter. And with our bags,
Oh
we
my
look at
God.
15, 14, 16-year-olds. We had to find our way across the mountain. Of course, we got lost. Of
That's
course, we
such an
got lost.
adventure. Oh my goodness.
Yeah. And when you say it reveals something to you, that's when I realized that maybe as a leader, I would be a problem. Because while we were lost, I was like, you guys, we
Mhm.
can do this. Let's just use the compass and the maps. Let's use everything they've taught us. And everyone was looking at me like, no, we're going to pay people to take us to the end of the place, please. And then everybody contributed
I mean,
money.
I was gonna ask, did they have to send a search party or you actually made your way to where you're supposed to go?
Luckily, we made our way with the help of some of the locals. For some other
Ah,
groups, they sent a search party for them.
oh
So,
dear.
yeah. So yeah, like at some point, like as at 12, it was raining, and one of the girls was reporting like they just climbed the peak and they just started crying.
Mm.
So the
Oh,
instructors had to leave camp and get them. They came back like past 12 and stuff. But yeah, they
oh
were
my
safe
God.
because that was when the country was still safer. So yeah, that is my
Oh.
mountain story. What is your mountain story?
Oh my, I don't know my mountain story. I mean, like, just like you, I mean, obviously it's like a guided path is a path, but then I feel like climbing a mountain because you're kind of like going uphill. And if
Hmm.
I can talk about this particular mountain, Mount Sabino, it's that it is very steep. Your legs are so tired, and you're like, I could be at home in my bed. I could be, hanging out with my friends. I could be doing anything, but I chose to come out here in the wilderness and suffer. Why?
Yeah.
Like you ask yourself, like, why? And then you also like, I've come a long way. I might as well go ahead and, like I'm not a quitter, so I should go ahead and finish. And you kind of like put one foot forward in front of the other. You get to the top, and then you're like, oh, I have to actually go back. But also, I think reaching the summit, I think there's a feeling that you get that I think only people who have done something like that, people who run marathons, people who kind of partake in extreme adventures only can relate to such things. Like the feeling of like, I can do hard things that you get from doing something like that. And again, it's like you also, because you're so much in your head when you're doing such an activity, because you're kind of like trying to concentrate to keep yourself going, like you get to reflect so much on your life. But I'm also grateful that, you're like, my legs can carry me up this mountain. Like I should be grateful for this body that I'm in. So it's just a lot of reflection that happens. And it's like, I feel like the mountains change you in so many ways. So it's like once you go in there and you kind of like look at it as, like this thing that is hard, but also is out to teach you and not to kill you, then, it makes you better for it, I would say.
Wow. That's
Yeah.
really interesting because that's fertile grounds for thought. Huh.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Hmm.
because you're
Hmm.
climbing. I mean, there's not enough energy to talk because I mean you're gasping for air. So, all you have to do is think. I see that, and so
Yeah.
now I am detecting that you were very active as a child. Okay, so what club activities did you do in school, middle school, like secondary school, and I detect notes of drama. And I detected bits
Hmm.
of literature. Of course, you're a writer, so there was literature there.
Yeah.
So, yeah. But what were your club activities? All of them, if you, as much as you can share.
Yeah. Okay, I mean, it's interesting that you ask that because most of the primary schools I went to three primary schools. They were, I don't know, think about a rural school.
Hmm.
So it's that what I remember as being extracurricular activities was what we called physical education. So it would be like
Oh.
maybe you're in class. I remember like in lower primary school, you got like for like about 30 minutes and you're there with your all little children in shorts and skirts because you're all little and just kids, and holding each other's hands and just running around and like doing a part together and things like that. And I also remember participating in running, but also, and it's
Mm.
something I was thinking about later on, because right now I'm also a bit into running. I am hopefully going to run a marathon later this year. I hope I will. Yeah, but then primary school, it was that we had seasons where schools would compete, like, for who is the better runner in a
Yeah.
given region, and then send them to the national level. But then I feel like we never had preparation to actually, build our capacity to run. So it's like it's
Mm.
second term, and they're like, oh, it's athletic season. So every so often, maybe like twice in a week, they get the entire school there, they close the classrooms and go to the field, and they put you, like, say, primary 5, stand on the standing point and run, and whoever gets to the finish point first is the better runner. So there's no practice whatsoever. Like, they just put you there and you just run. And so it's the people who are naturally athletic and, fit in, I don't know, for whatever reason, they're the ones who would actually get to progress to the next level. So I remember participating in such sports, but I never won anything. So I never represented my school in that. But I also participated in drama. I remember there's a time, I think I was in primary 6, I represented my school at an inter-school drama competition. I was the one reciting the school speech. So I think at some point, kind of like had some, I was a sharp kid, so I did a bit of that. So those are some of the things I participated in when I was younger. And then in I I wasn't, I mean, we did drama because it was sort of mandatory. Like every other year, we would do inter-dormitory drama competitions. So like everyone was mandated to participate. So I participated in those ones. So kind of like singing, acting, dancing, and all that. But also, I would say while I'd grown up reading so much in high school, that's when I would say put all my extra time into reading novels, like discovered books like Mills and Boone and, Pesetas and which other books are you reading? I think the Sweet Valley High novels. So those took up so much of my time, and I can't say that I was doing any athletics in high school because I just wanted to read stories. That's what I wanted to do.
So you built your body in primary school, and then in high school you built your mind. Yeah, it's all coming together. It's all coming together.
When you say it like that, it sounds really wow. Yeah, yeah, I did that. I did that, Sharma.
I'm very interested in the writing part because now we're going to talk about like you publishing not one, not two, three children's
Yeah.
books at the same time. First, congratulations. Two,
Thank you
great
so much.
work.
Thank you
Three,
so much.
you say you're practicing for a marathon, so I can see how that also ties into how you write. Yeah, we'll talk about like that when I come to craft because for some people writing is a sprint. If you're writing for some others, it's like a marathon, and I find marathons to be much more fulfilling. I was never a sprinter. I could do 10
Have you run a
kilometers.
marathon before?
Yeah, I did a quarter marathon as when I was 13 in the school's inter-house sports. Every year, I just made
Oh
sure I did it
wow.
just to complete it because, I mean, I wasn't
Oh
athletic. I
wow.
was I was just a guy who was just good in English. So, but I wanted to have personality. So I was like, so the
Hmm.
5,000 kilometers I would practice. I would never make the cut, obviously. But for the marathon, it was just
Okay.
open. 10 kilometers,
Yeah.
10.5,
Mhm.
and it was
Mm.
guided. So I would just run and they would be like, go, go, go. And I was a little kid, I was just small, but that really built up my
Yeah.
endurance. It gave me great
Hmm.
thighs and strong legs.
Mm.
So yeah, right after, yeah.
The
So
benefits, you see.
yes, yeah. So I think that taught me like, even now as I write, I find how that affects my writing. In fact, that I am always patient and I'm just trying to get to the
Mm.
end of it as much as I can rather than worry about, oh, I'm not doing this fast enough. So yeah, so
Hmm.
I see how the physical builds the mind. But yeah, back to
That's
writing.
great introspection.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. So yeah, but back to writing before you get carried away.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
so when did you decide that you were going to be a writer? Because I mean, as a prolific reader, there's always that question
Mm.
of oh, when am I going to make something like this? But yeah, for you, when
Yeah.
was that? What was that period that you were like, I can do this? And then you now decided to even now write creatively. That's like I would like to
Yeah.
hear that journey.
Okay. Oh wow, this would be a long-winded, winded one.
Yeah.
I would say that growing up, I just take you a little bit back.
Mm-hmm.
And before I went to the UK, I was working for an organization that works with children. And one of the common questions we'd ask kids is, what do you want to be when you grow up? And they'll
Yeah.
tell you all sorts of things, and you're like, this is amazing. Like you can dream, and but you don't know what the world has. I mean, you don't tell the kid that you don't know how the world is gonna turn out. Like he's gonna receive this dream of yours. But yeah, but I don't recall anyone asking me what I wanted to be when I was younger.
Mm.
Interestingly, I mean, I had aspirations, but I don't remember like anyone, like any vivid moment where someone was like, "Brenda, what do you want? What do you want to be when you grow up?" But then, in when I was going to high school, I went to Nyanji Girls Senior Secondary School. It's one of the greatest schools in Western Uganda. Well, actually, in all of Uganda. We had the form we had to fill in, and they asked us what we wanted to be. I said I wanted to be a doctor and a lawyer somehow, those two professions. But then I later realized that I excelled in the art subject, so I was doing well in history, in literature, but then I struggled a lot in the science subjects, and and somehow, obviously, I mean, there would be people who would come into the school to teach us about, like give us some sort of career guidance, but it wasn't so clear to me what I really wanted to be. But I always knew that I enjoyed reading stories, and of course, I studied literature, but the path wasn't that clear for me that I wanted to do journalism. But then, finishing O level, going into high school, I did literature as well. And as sort of like consulting with the teachers what we could study, I somehow ended up, choosing journalism. And so that's how I ended up doing mass communication and journalism at Uganda Christian University Mukono. And so I sort of like, got myself into that. But of course, looking back, I feel like I was sort of like kind of my path was sort of like threaded to lead to, journalism and writing. And so, did mass communication for my undergrad, got my first job with a New Vision. The New Vision is actually one of Uganda's biggest newspapers. So that's why I started writing. And again, I just realized that I truly enjoyed speaking to people, like, interviewing people, hearing their life stories and, going to write them. And, someone tells you, I read your story in the New Vision, like I saw your byline, like it just made me happy. And of course, at the time, it was just all vibes and, just, my name is in the newspapers. I can't say that at the time I had a dream of writing creative. It was just, writing news stories, writing feature stories and all that. But then in 2018, I started a blog because I felt that, again, what I was doing, like with news writing and all that, it was just kind of monotonous. I wanted to do something that was more expressive, like maybe write about, the random ideas that I have. So I have this book called Her Musings, and it's really just me writing about my musing. It will be thoughts that are inspired by a conversation I have with someone or things that I observe when I'm out and about, and I want to write about them. And again, it's like the feedback on those things of how you write about things, and someone is like, oh my God, I can't believe that you could actually like relay my thoughts the exact same way, you have them. So like that connection that is created through writing. So I've kept that blog to death, which is, yeah. So even then I was just, writing, like just I want a place where I can express myself. And it was just that, but also just like the conversation that would start from, people reading my blogs and like, I like that. Like I started writing about my experiences when I moved to the UK because it was a lot of, culture shock, but also so many things which are just so bigger than anything I'd ever experienced. And I wanted to tell the world about it. Like, oh my God, the buses are very scheduled. They come on time. The roads are so clean. Like I took the train for the first time, like I just wanted to share about all those things, and people actually enjoyed reading those kinds of things. So yeah, and then when I was doing my master's, we had to do a placement, sort of like an internship. And I got to do my internship with a charity called Edu Sports. It's founded in the UK, but has a presence mostly in Ghana and a bit in Kenya. And
Mm-hmm.
they build community libraries, what they call sports in Ghana. And how they are made is that, they work with local communities. Like they come into an area like in a village and kind of like work with the local leaders. Like people understand the concept of what a village library serves in the community, why it's important. And they're not just going to like the urban areas like in Accra, but in the rural areas where there's actually the greatest need, where literacy levels are so low, but also children don't have access to books. And I remember learning about this work and being like, this is so fascinating to me. Like, and again, you like for most developing countries, they're the same challenges we have, like children not having access to reading materials or even not appreciating reading for pleasure. Like, you find that for most children, the book they have access to is a textbook at school, and they're also not just looking at that textbook as just a tool to pass exams, not to just sit and enjoy and conceptualize a story or just be like, what is this character teaching me? Like, they're just reading to be examined, and obviously there's no joy in that. We both know that. So anyway, so I'm interning with this charity organization, and an idea is forming in my head of like, this is something I could do back home as well, like create a village library, because that is not something that I had growing up. And I say as privilege in a way that my parents were both teachers, so somehow books made their way into our homes, into my home. So I had access to those books. But my peers, in the neighborhood didn't have access to the same resources. And I look back and I'm like, had it not been me being born in that family, I don't know that I would have had access to books or even the love for literature. So I was like, this is something that I want to start in my village. And this charity organization, EduSports, was offering me a blueprint. So I learned as much as I could there, but also, which now gets me to why I wrote, children's books, is that they were establishing libraries in the communities with the communities and having, like older kids volunteer in the libraries to teach the younger kids. But they also developed a book called Kwame's Adventures, and that book was set within the local communities of Ghana. So as a child, it's like, you have most of the literature, especially like most of us grew up on, was Western literature. So like you're reading these stories, yes, they are great, but you can't really see yourself in these books. Like the representation aspect was missing. And I thought, well, I want to establish a library in my village, but I also want children to have materials where they're going to read and they can see things that are within their environment. If I talk about a banana plantation, if I talk about a child going to a well, if I talk about a child, walking from home to school, like this is something that they are familiar with. So, and again, I was like, I have that capability, like I can actually write. So I actually have the material. So that's how a seed was. So it was that I want to start a library, but not just a library. I also want to have my body of work in the shelves. And that sort of sparked the idea. But it was also a combination of things. So it was that, but also, and I mean, it would be remiss of me not to say this. One of the things that I loved, when I got to the UK was community libraries. Like there were libraries. Everyone was like, oh my God, like, I used to stay in Nottingham. I used to stay on St. Anne's Road, and there's a library called, I think, St. Anne's Valley Library. And I remember the very first day I entered that library, there's a notice board with like different activities that are happening during the week, like reading groups for children, parents meetings. And then, I walked in, and then the librarians, like they were very open, like welcomed me. And then I looked to the side and there's like a shelf stacked with books. There are computers on the side for people to come and do research. And I was like, why can't we have these things back home? So it's just one of those places that made me so happy. And I was like, if I can, in my own way, like I want to replicate this. So it might be a long while, but I'm making headway with, like the little steps I'm making, like writing these books, setting up, like a shelf of books and, having children come and borrow them, until the bigger dream of where I can establish a structure. I'm getting there, like work in progress. So yeah, that was a long-winded answer, but I hope that it sort of like paints a picture of how we got here.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you so much. Because I think at every point of the story, I was like, oh, she sees a need and she's feeling it. She sees a need and she's feeling it. And I'm like, wow, like that's not selfish at all. I mean, because you sound like, you could end up on Wall Street.
You know what? From your mouth to God's ears. New York Times bestseller. I'm coming.
I see that. Okay. So I'm very interested in children's literature because I know,
Yeah.
even while you were telling me about school, I remember we didn't talk about books until we got to high school. And then you said Mills and
Yeah.
Booms. And I was like, yeah, yeah. It was at high school that I actually got into reading novels too, because, Mills and Booms. Although
Mm-hmm.
I did have like children's literature growing up because we had like a small
Mm-hmm.
library. And once the librarian clocked that, okay, this boy likes to read books, whenever I came, he would give me 10 extra minutes out of my break to read books. And I found them very much like what you
Oh,
were writing now and stuff. But those
yeah.
books weren't Nigerian. They were
Mm-hmm.
more, I think Asian. I had a girl called Lila, and there was a place
Mm-hmm.
where they were eating frogs. And I was like, no, I mean, I know they eat frogs in jails, but my people, we don't eat frogs. So I couldn't get that. Having written children's books for a bit, like how is that how is that different from, writing for journalism and like telling stories that you've gotten from an interview? Like what's that specific thing that cuts it and makes it a children's book?
Yeah. Okay. A couple of things. I
Hmm.
mean, I think that in many ways, my books, and I have some copies here.
Um,
Hello.
I don't have
They're
copies yet,
kind
but
of.
I shall. I hope I get copies
Yeah,
too.
I'll get some copies too. I promise. I promise.
All
Yeah,
right.
there. I believe like what you mentioned. Like most of the literature we had access to was foreign literature, and this wasn't that we couldn't understand it. It was just that it didn't have our faces reflected in what we're
Mm,
reading. So it was that concept, but also knowing that children are very visual. So it's that what you're writing, you want to write something that is as graphic in the sense that that sparks imagination of children. So you want
mhm,
to do that, like your words should actually be illustratable. Like that is super important because it's like
mm,
in journalism, it's like, for example, when you're writing news, it's like you're writing facts. Say an event like they launched a library. It's like they launched a library. This is who showed up. This is what the parents had to say. This is what the kids had to say. This is the impact this library is potentially going to have in the community based off the people you interviewed. It's kind of like fact based reporting. With these kinds of children's stories, you want the story to stay with a child to read the sentence and be like, oh, like where does this take me? So you're
mm,
kind of like appealing to the different senses of a child, like their hearing, their sense of smell, their sense of sight, their imagination, and all that. So it's that the writing should act ideally encompass all those kinds of things because again, kids, they also have a short attention span, so
true,
you want
true.
them to read but also internalize what they're reading. So I feel like that's what makes it a bit unique compared to like when you're writing for adults, because for adults it's like they understand, so you're kind of like not trying to over explain everything. So with children you're explaining but also trusting that they have capacity to understand but also to like build on what you're telling them.
Mhm.
So I think that's what makes it different from adult writing and journalistic writing.
I'm very passionate about writing, so I have a hobby of when I see a piece of writing, I share it into its technical bits because I'm also trying to teach. So whenever I approach
Mhm.
children's writing, there's not a lot of literary technique that I can find there, but I do really, yeah, because I mean, I say all of this to say that I have never been able to write a children's book because because I'm a professor. I hope to get there one day because I think it's very, very underserved. In
Mm.
Nigeria, we have a youth bulge. We have over 100, I think 120 million people. This is arbitrary anyway, but over half of the population is young. But the
Mm.
children's section is
Mhm.
underserved, severely
Yeah, yeah.
underserved. I don't know if that's the same case in Uganda. Tell us about Uganda's like publication history, and I don't
Oh
know
my
why
God.
why are we at this point where we are looking for children's books, and were there ever children's books in the beginning? So just from your understanding, just from your points.
Wow. Obviously, I cannot paint Uganda's history as beautiful as you painted Nigerian history, the history of publishing in Uganda. So I'm not very qualified to speak about it. But I
Fair.
guess I can speak from my own experiences and, like kind of my understanding of, like interaction with schools, like as an adult, but also when I was growing up. I can't say we don't have Ugandan authors. We have Ugandan authors, but I think like with a history of, I mean, can I say colonialism? So coming in, like, like we have that literature, like we are heavily influenced by American films because I know these people are trying to sell their stuff. So somehow they get access to our market. So that is what is on the market. That's what people are buying. But also I think in terms of like a reading culture, I don't know that that is something that is in our culture, like historically.
Mm.
I would say there were elements of storytelling, oral storytelling, that I part believe is dying down because obviously right now the advent of technology and people reading on tabs and just so much watching television, it's like who wants to listen to stories out loud anymore? It's not as common,
Mm.
but it is, it's still something that I think is very important. Like, I emphasize in my books, like one of the, I would say the themes across the three books is oral storytelling from generation to generation. But yeah, so I can't say culturally we had a reading culture, and again, I can't speak to the history of publishing in Uganda, but I know that children's literature is there, but again, access is the problem because
Mm.
again, go back to the primary schools, like typically, I mean, you go to the rural areas, like a parent is basically trying to survive, to put food on the table. So obviously they're not prioritizing going to the bookstore and buying books. Like the books they're buying for the children are books to go to school, like books where they can write notes and things like that, not storybooks. Or they
Mm.
don't even know about storybooks as well. So how are they trying to get a child what they don't know? Things like that. And I also like recently learned, like even today, like Uganda's literacy rate has gone up, but that doesn't directly translate into a growth in the reading culture. And again, it's that about 70% of rural schools in Uganda do not have libraries. So it's that, I guess it's a combination of so many things.
Mm.
Like, even if people are writing books, like, can these schools access them? There's that bit. Like, schools are struggling to, maintain kids, have chalk to write with on the chalkboard, and, just having the basic amenities to support children. In such a setting, buying books just seems like a luxury. So it's that even when we're creating these books, the demand is there,
Mm.
but then the capacity to actually meet that demand is also a bit of a challenge. So I think this is is rather complicated, but I'm hoping that, like with what I'm doing right now, because I also believe like there's so many people like me who probably want to make a difference in their communities, to maybe start libraries, to go back to the primary schools they went to, and like be like, how are things here, and maybe I can help support the next generation of these kids by establishing a library. People like me recognizing that need, that we can actually do something about it. And if anyone should take anything from this, it's that I mean, I'm just one man. I'm starting a library in my village. I started by buying a shelf and putting it in my parents' house, putting a couple of books there, books that I bought from charity shops in the UK, put over there. So in a couple of months, in May, these books of mine are also going to be on that shelf. And the dream is to actually build an even bigger library, like a community library, again, something that my fellow village mates buy in and want to maintain, want to contribute to, because ultimately they're the ones who are going to sustain it. That people can also go do the same in their villages, that they don't just sit in Kampala and, be on vibes and, hanging out and all those kinds of things, yet they can actually make a difference in their communities. It's like, obviously, we can sit and wait for government to do these things. But while we wait for that, it's that what can we do within our capacities with the little resources that we have to be able to, uplift the places that we come from. So for me, that's where I come into saying that, change can happen and it's going to be gradual. And maybe it starts with individuals, doing the little and the small that they can within their immediate areas of influence. So in this case, villages. And then we'll build it up from there to, the national level. So that's what I hope for. And then another thing, before I finish this, you know, I wrote so many essays when I was trying to win scholarships to study in the UK unsuccessfully. But one of the things we'd write about is that, you want to, like cultural exchange, to learn how things are happening in the developed world, and hopefully learn some of the things that can help people where you come from translate that knowledge and into those areas and kind of help uplift where you come from. Like, would write those things in those issues of, I'm going to travel to the UK and, like, learn from like cross-cultural learning, because again, you have a convergence of people from all sorts of places around the world, and you're learning how they're doing different things. And now, like, for me, it's as looking at, these community libraries and being like, I want to replicate this in my village. And while I thought that, and I was like, how am I going to do that? It's like, I had the idea, but somehow the universe has sort of like orchestrated ways to help me make that happen. So it was, me being connected to this charity organization, because I didn't know about it, was so random. I think I came across them on LinkedIn, and I messaged the founder and I was like, hey, I want to do this. I want to volunteer with you. Will you, have me? She interviewed me and she accepted. So it was like, I got to learn that, got the idea of, like how to start a village library, got the idea of writing children's books. Now I've written children's books. I have set up a shelf. My parents are doing the mobilizing of the villagers and telling them, hey, come to our home. There are books. Your children should come and borrow books. Eventually, resources allowing, we'll set up a structure and an actual library, there. And so the culture, we must create the culture of reading. We will be the people who are going to build that culture of reading. So it's not there, but someone has to do it. I mean, there are already some charity organizations that have projects in some parts of Uganda where they're doing things like, and I believe it's probably the same in Nigeria, same as what you're doing with, Call. So it's like someone has to start this, and hopefully other people will pick it up, because it's like doing these things individually, we definitely can't go far, but together we definitely can do so much.
After this interview, one day I would message you and we'll talk about like how we can also work together, because I'm very inspired. So I just learned something now that, probably send that LinkedIn message. So yeah, thank you for that. Thank you for that.
Please do that. Please do
Thank
that.
you.
Yeah.
Three books. Grandma and the Locusts. Now, I'm going to butcher the other names. Anyembambazi. Is that correct?
Yeah, you said it well.
Anyembambazi
Yeah.
and the Talking Bird.
Yes.
Then that last one. I'm still going to try. I'm African. So
Please try.
Nyantagambirwa.
Yes, you said it. Look. That's it. Yantagambira.
Okay. Okay, so 3 books. So from conception to like publication and the writing, and probably the nights where you had to probably climb a mountain and get inspiration to a genie. If that happened, I would love to hear it. But yeah, what was it like conceptualizing these stories and then finally seeing them? What was that experience like? I mean, remember, I talking to somebody who also would like to step into children's books. So if you want to get technical,
Yeah.
I'm all for it. And I would also like to know why these 3 stories, where did they come from? Because a lot of people are always like, oh, talk about our African myths. And I'm like, yeah, those myths are great, but I would really like to generate new stories. So I wanted to know if these are also like new stories that you generated, or are they based on some myths? And yeah, so all of that good stuff, the artistic process.
Oh, wow.
Take as long as you need.
Oh my God. So, I mean, I wish I can tell you that this was very technical for me. I would say that these stories were very much inspired by my relationship with my grandmother. May her soul rest in peace. And I spent a bit of my childhood under her care, and because we stayed together, it was like a lot of knowledge and information was shared between us, like her telling me about her youth, and again, like how how we learned lessons. It wasn't that your parents would sit you down and tell you that doing this is bad. They would tell you a story, and then it would be up to you to pick up a lesson. So these stories were part inspired by her. And again, it's like knowing like things that kids are experiencing. And this is not to say that these are not great things, but the things that kids of today are missing out on, like the aspect of oral storytelling, or even like having this kind of great connection and relationships with their grandparents and learning from them. So this book, Nyantagambira, it's actually, I should say that all these books are in English, the stories are in English, though this title is obviously in vernacular. Nyantagambira is a Runyankole word. Runyankole is my language, which means a child who does not listen. A child who does not listen. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So again, when I say that, like this is how, like learnings were sort of like passed on to children, it was like, like this story is about a grandmother interacting with a child and telling them a story of a child who refuses to heed the guidance of an elder, and as a result of that there are consequences, and that sometimes those consequences could be fatal, could be fatal. So like the importance of listening to your elders. And I feel like these are still so many things. These are still things that kids today can learn from, but also kind of like a dying tradition, which I feel like culturally, these are things that we ought to hold on to as Africans, to kind of like, these are things that make us who we are. But then again, because of a lot of consumption of Western media, we are looking at our traditions and the stories that made us who we are as something that is not important, but yet it is important. And then the story of Grandma and the Locust, again, it's, again about a bonding moment between a grandmother and a child. And the grandmother telling, an event from, growing up, kind of like events that shaped who they are. And I think, again, as adults, is give us insights into like why our parents are who they are, but also kind of like understanding like how events from the past also play into like the experiences we have in the present. So it is about that. And then I never was on the talking bad is about a relationship between a young girl, a child, and a bird. And I get this steps into like the power of connections and openness, like how children are playful and just very innocent, that when you tap into like their observation skills, or like even them being to see their surroundings and kind of like pay attention to that lessons can come from all sorts of places. So it was me thinking about some of this folklore and how it can be brought to today's generation, like children of today who may not have the opportunity to get these stories from their grandparents, but also stories that are so much fun, stories that these kids can see themselves in, because like the surroundings, I mean, all these books are set in villages, and this is not to say that it's a representation of what village life typically looks like in Uganda, but it's a glimpse into it. But I want when children pick this book and they can be like, this is, I look like this child, or maybe I can actually learn like this child. And also we didn't just do these books as just stories. They have sort of like comprehension questions at the end, in that when you finish the book, you can actually go back to see, like the lessons, or even conversation starters of like the children will be prompted to ask their parents questions of like, what did your parents tell you about this growing up? Things like that. So I'm hoping that they're not just stories that children read and enjoy. I mean, there's that element, but also to start conversations about, like their heritage, like where they come from, and like where their parents come from, because most of the time it's like you have kids in Kampala or in the urban centers, and some of them have even never gone to the villages. And I feel like that history is what makes us who we are. Like it's what forms our identity, because when we don't have that, then you have a generation of people who are lost and just don't know who they are. It's like you be swayed wherever you can be swayed because you don't know who you are. But then I feel that these stories are kind of some of the elements that help ground us in who we are as Africans, as as who we are. And I think it is important, and I think children, it's a good age and a right stage in life for children to start believing in these things, to know the importance of them. And I feel that if these stories can contribute to that, I feel like I will have done something that will be that will make me really proud.
Well done. Yeah,
Thank you.
because
Thank you.
yeah, because just to share, I had an idea for a novel in school after watching an American superhero film, because I thought my
Mm-hmm.
classmates were amazing. So I started
Oh, wow.
yeah, so I imagined all of us as superheroes, and I wrote, and
Mhm.
we started fighting the bad guys and everything. But while I was writing that story, everyone had an English name, and I could only see white people. So it took
Mm.
me 7 years, 8 years, 9 years, because when I was finally out of school, I was now in university. I was now in control of my own media, and then I realized that, oh, I'm black. And then I now understood what it meant to be black. Then I understood what it meant to be African. Then I understood what it
Yeah.
meant to be Nigerian. Then they changed the
Yeah.
meaning of being Nigerian and African, and I had to adjust. Then I realized that I
Yeah.
was a man. So all through the while, I had seen that the story had changed, and at the current iteration of this story, my local tongue is in it. Far cry from when I started. My first draft was all English and it was all white people, it was all bosses and speak. But now
Yeah.
I have my local tongue in there, I have my village people in there. And I think that
Yeah.
really speaks to the power of that grounding that you speak of. And it's just
Yes.
important. So here's just one reader and editor saying, we need that grounding, and I'm
Yes.
hoping you write more. So, but just to ask, we talked about
Yeah.
access. You've spoken of these books being on the shelf in your village,
Yeah.
but now
Mm-hmm.
around Uganda,
Mm-hmm.
are we how are we getting these books out there? And are these books reaching the rest of the continent? Is TK Luminaries
Yes.
going to, okay? Is it also going to
There will
cross the
be.
pond into the diaspora?
Yes. Yes.
Oh, so that means there are plans on the way.
Absolutely.
Could you
So
tell me
these
a little bit?
stories.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I can preempt some of like the marketing plans for this book. So my publisher TFK Luminary, I mean, they're amazing. He's been in the publishing business for a really long time, for many years. So he's also been doing like children's books. So he already has access to some of those schools, but also like charity organizations that would be interested in helping us carry like the messaging that we're taking with these books. So there is that. And I'm also super grateful to be having this conversation with you, because it means that these books are also going to reach the Nigerian market, and I'm really really
Yeah,
excited about that. So there's that. So these books are going to be available online on Amazon, as well as other book retailing online platforms, so they could be accessed anywhere in the world when they launch. I'm going to share these details with you, so you can maybe, I don't know, add a link in this in this interview when it's published. So they'll be
yes.
available there. But then also, I think the important thing that we want to do is school outreaches. So I mentioned that I went to 3 primary schools, and I was back home in January, and I visited one of the primary schools that I went to. Shama, that school looks like it's frozen in time. Like how it looked about so many years ago is how it still looks, like with a couple of classroom blocks, just looking run down. One of the blocks had 2 doors. One had on a library. It was during the holidays, so I didn't have, I didn't see inside the library, but I could only imagine what was there. So I can't imagine that kids who come to that school really have access to books, or even, like understanding the importance of reading for pleasure. So what I'm hoping to do is to visit initially my 3 primary schools, and donate some books. I mean, they'll definitely have copies of my books, but also interact with the school management team and the teachers, like about the importance of having children pick interest in reading for pleasure, not just for examination. That's going to happen with those schools, but also I'm hoping that, again, through my publisher, we can reach many other schools. But then another thing that I would want to invite everyone to do, anyone who has the means, well, I invite everyone to buy my books and donate them to their former primary schools, their school libraries. Yeah, because children need these books. But also, just like the outreach that I'm planning to do with a school, the former primary schools I went to, I'm inviting people to do the same with their primary schools, because I know there are so many kids who come from villages. I mean, leave alone the people who went to, like these affluent schools where they have fully fledged libraries. I'm talking about the schools in rural areas where, accessibility is still such a big challenge. And, these are people now who are in Kampala, they are well studied, they have good jobs, and they have a little money to spend to probably, visit, like buy a couple of books, or even some people are even that rich that they could even donate a library to their school if they wanted to. So this is a call. Like, if anyone is, should pick anything from this, is to go do something like that. Because I feel like, going back to what you asked me earlier, this is how we grow the reading culture in our countries, from the grassroots to the top. Like, we start there. So yeah, that's a bit of the marketing plan. So books will be available everywhere online, but also in the shelves in Uganda, so people can get them in all sorts of places. And I'm excited for everyone to get them.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's clear. That's clear. It's like
Mm-hmm.
it's like you dragged me because for like 2 years I've been like I would like to donate books to my school because I
Well,
yeah
Shama. I'm challenging you. Please donate some books.
I shall
Yeah.
definitely. Definitely. But
Mm-hmm.
so while you were doing
Mm-hmm.
this as on your journey to like,
Mm-hmm.
getting these books out there and work, the reading culture and all of your goals, What's one
Mm.
advice that stuck with you that kept you going? You know that no that made that added that win to your sales. Or no, as a runner, gave you the glucose while you're running this marathon.
I mean, piece of advice is that, and I think this is easier to say than to do, is finish what you start. Finish what you start. Because, I mean, I have so many draft copies of things. And I mean, I should tell you this, before I started writing children's books, I started writing a novel, a fiction novel.
I
That
could
is still in the works.
I could have, if they had asked me, gone to your head, is she writing a novel? I'll have been like, yes, definitely.
Oh yeah, yeah. I'm writing an adult romance novel, so that is in the works. But with children's books, it was that one of the ways that I ensured that I finished this project was that I committed to doing this project when I had a conversation with my publisher, and then we said that we're going to do this. I was like, now I can't disappoint him. Like, I actually have to follow through and write these books. But then it was also, like how they say you usually have this dream in your head, and somehow it keeps nagging at you, it keeps nagging
Mm.
at you, and it's that you just have to do it. And it's like, what excuse did I have not to write these books, honestly? Was it the capacity to write? No, it wasn't that. Was it, where to publish this work? It wasn't that I had someone who could publish my work. So what was my excuse really? So it was that I started this and it dragged because I think I was working on these books for almost a year, like all of last year, 2020. Yeah, 2025. It's not easy, but it's doable. The advice is like, finish what you start. And
Mm.
somehow it's like, again, when you start doing something and you start telling people about it, it's that you actually, sometimes you may not actually see the end goal of actually how you're going to get from point A to point B. But when you start, somehow the path sort of like clears for you to actually get to where you want to go. But it's like, unless you start, then you actually you won't get to where you want to go. So I think once you start, somehow the universe will conspire to ensure that what you're planning to do actually gets to be accomplished. And like, you set in your path people and opportunities and resources. I mean, these are available online, but also in the people around us to actually help us get from point A to point B. So it's like you start, it's that you also share this work with people. You tell people that you're doing things, because again, you don't know who is going to connect you to who can take this project to the next level. So it's that bit as well. So it's like you do the work, you put yourself out there, you talk about it, and then you just keep doing your thing.
Because yeah, you shared about this work. Like I was just going down and I was seeing like, everything. And I know
Mhm.
usually we do have I think locally here we do have like some sort of aversion to sharing things because there's always like that concept of evil eye. And to be honest, it has never worked for me. And then you mentioned writing a novel, an adult romance. And I am a
Yeah.
fan of everything I have read from, Uganda. I think last year I was
Okay.
raving about a girl is a body of water, by Jennifer Makumbi Masuga. So
Mm.
and how she talked about the rolling hills of Uganda and like there were so many banana trees, and I was like, I love banana and
Oh yeah.
plantain. Oh yeah, right. So now about your adult romance. At what stage are we, and how can we help you get this romance out? I mean, we're going to help get the children's books out. We're trying, but for that romance, like
Yeah.
that's a personal investment for me because I'm not a child and I want to read your romance, and
Yeah.
know what love in Uganda is like. So, what can we do to help you as a writer, not just a writer of the romance, but as a writer,
Mhm.
as a visionary, as someone who is really interested in developing that reading culture and at the grassroots? What can readers
Yeah.
do? What can, maybe someone like me who's always on the internet talking about books too? What can the
No.
influencers do? How can we help?
Yeah.
Ask anything of us.
Oh my God. Well, there's one thing that you can do for me is hold me accountable and promise me
Okay,
one thing as well, that once that book is out, I'm going to be back here on this podcast speaking to you about that novel, that you give me that platform to talk about it. And I'm glad that you brought that up, because again, it's that now that I've talked about it, I actually have to do it.
that's the
I have
plan.
to.
Yes.
So the book is I have a full draft, a fully fledged draft written out. I am working on revising it, and that's the hard bit because it's like now you're going back and you're like, oh, but I loved this thing when I wrote it initially, but now maybe it doesn't make sense. So
Yeah.
kind of going back to the story and ensuring that, like the flow of the narrative is strong, it's as compelling as I want it to be. And hopefully, oh God, hopefully it's going to be complete before this year ends. So yeah. But first things first, the children's books.
That's this
Writing
first, the
is hard
children's
because
books.
I've been working on that book since 2020. I started a story, then somewhere along the way in 2021 I lost it. Like I
Oh,
somehow had not backed it up. No, actually I lost it in 2022. I had not worked. I switched computers, and it turns out that I had not even saved it anywhere online. So I lost the entire story. I think I had gone up to like 40,000 words, and that was devastating. So for like a long period of months I was not writing, and then I started again later in mid 2023, and somehow I crawled through it. So now I have a full draft. I have a full draft that I'm working to revise. And maybe the other way you can support me is, I can share with you my draft copy, and, you review it, and, help me, like where the plot is like lacking, and you're like, how can we thicken this further? Those kinds of things. How do we hasten the intrigue here and there? Yeah, that's the kind of help that I'll need. But ultimately, that you help me, give me a platform to talk about my book when it's out.
I mean,
Yeah.
from one runner to another, I would love to speak with you again about the book, and anytime I have any book,
Yeah.
I'll be here. And
Hmm.
if you send me your draft, it's like threatening me with a good time because I'm yeah, because looking at your
Yeah.
draft also feel because it's also selfish too because I'll look at your draft and I'll be like, oh yeah, so I think this is not working, and I'll go back to my draft and be like, oh wait, is this working? So yeah, whenever you can. I am open, and yeah, I promise you, I
Yeah.
will do as best as I can. Because I still work as an editor, as a fiction editor.
Mm.
Because
Hmm.
I'm trying to I really want to edit and teach fiction when I'm like at least like
Hmm.
10 years from now. So that's the plan, and
Wow.
across languages, English and French, because of Africa,
Oh,
and
you
then
also speak French.
Portuguese.
How cool is that?
Yeah, I'm a B1, and I keep a small blog in French. So yeah,
Oh,
because I
look
want to
at
access all of
you.
Africa. So
Oh,
yeah.
wow, look at you. How about your
Yeah.
Portuguese? How good is that?
So I'm still an A1, but I can make basic sentences. At least
Mm-hmm.
it's because once you learn French, the Romance languages start to become a breeze because, so yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
they're very linked. And then I looked down towards South Africa, and I realized I had like three Portuguese speaking countries. And I was like, okay, so I
Yeah.
should add that. So I think once I
Oh,
do
how
that, I've
smart of
unlocked,
you.
yeah, just unlocking everybody's lingua franca. I mean, colonialism happened, but we can connect.
Yeah. I was going to say about, again, the importance of talking about our work, our projects, even the works in progress, is,
Yeah.
again, you never know who is going to connect you to who, because, again, that's how I ended up on this podcast, through
Yeah.
my former classmate. Shout out to you, Patience, for connecting me to you to be able to do this. Again, if I hadn't talked about these books that are coming out in May, I would not be here. So
Yeah.
yeah, I guess just I'm an advocate for speaking about what our plans and our dreams, because you just never know who is going to help you actualize that dream or that plan. So yeah.
That's a lesson. That's a lesson. I think that's one thing I will take away. Speaking about my plans. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think this next question is from Cole, like Cole, because
Hmm.
you align with Cole on so many things like education and then even literature and then down into like children's literature because like we Cole does outreaches to schools where we try to improve reading cultures and then most
Hmm.
especially education because
Yeah.
education has sort of like fallen off in the past 10 years, just to say the least about it. So Cole wants to know, what does
Yeah.
quality education mean and why should we care?
Repeat the question. What does quality education mean, and what should we care?
And why should we care about it? Like, what does quality education mean and why should
Oh,
we care about it? Like, why is there
oh
so much
wow.
frost? Why are we volunteering when we could be living it up in Bahamas or something? So, yeah.
Oh my God. Um, I mean, I think that quality education helps us as individuals come into who we're supposed to be. Like, so
Mm,
some sort of like self-actualization. Like, it helps us, to thrive and to be able to own our identity, but also within the context that we are placed in. And I think, like, again, because you're able to, when you land and like not just land in the sense of just getting things like, they typically would teach for us to cram things, but understanding them, it's like you're able to assess information that you're given and be able to make informed decisions about your life. And this could span in all sorts of ways in regards to your health, in regards to your like your finances, in regards to all sorts of things. And for kids especially, that their sense of self-worth and belonging is strengthened. And I think when children get to learn that when they're still young, then it kind of like helps set them up for this world, which can be sometimes harder than forgiving. Because I feel like when you know who you truly are, then it's not easy to be swayed. And again, like we live right now in an influencer culture, in a very like so much information is coming at us, and it's like if you don't know who you are, then there's just so much influence, and some of which could be very harmful. So I think that quality education also plays into, like, for example, media literacy, that kids are able to understand what they're reading and to be able to probe it and not take everything at face value. And ultimately, again, that goes back to helping them make informed decisions that are good for them and for themselves, for their self-esteem, for their self-worth, for their identities. And that just makes them wholesome human beings. So I feel like quality education plays a lot into that, into who we become.
While you were answering halfway, I was like, oh yeah, she's a journalist. She's a journalist. She's a journalist. She's a journalist. Thank you so much for that answer. That's really clarifying. When you say
No,
the
thank you.
influencer culture, I imagine, and influencer culture and us being grounded, I imagine that, the amount of information coming at us is like a wave. But what reading and quality education does, when you know who you are, it gives you these deep roots where, the water just washes past and you get wet, but you're not uprooted. So, and you're not moved to another place. So, yeah, that's what I imagine. Yeah.
Very big point. Yeah, exactly. That's
Oh,
it.
okay. Thank you so much. So, accounting for our 20 minutes, I think I've reached the end of this. I'm so happy. You were so succinct. Thank you for being so free for this, throughout this conversation. There are so many questions. There's so many places I wanted to go, because we didn't even talk about your running and like how different running Nairobi is from Uganda, because I know Uganda is like a wrinkled bed sheet, where Nairobi seems a little straight, So there's all of that, but I'll keep that conversation for our next book, where the main character might be a runner too. I don't know, but yeah, I'll keep that for our next book. I have been talking for a while and you've been talking, but I still want to know, do you have any questions for me that you'd like me to answer? So yeah.
I mean, I feel like, oh wow. First of all, I just want to say this was a wholesome conversation. Like, I truly enjoyed having this chat with you. Like,
Thank
I've gone
you.
to places I didn't even anticipate that I would. So I'm truly, 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 truly honored to have had this conversation with you. And again, just to commend the work that you're doing. Maybe the question I have, I mean, I'm curious about any recent school outreaches you've had. Like, what are you hearing from the children? Like, how do they receive you? And like, what are they saying?
Well, I haven't gone for any recent outreach with Cole recently, because
Mm-hmm.
I'm based in like a different city and I'm mostly just like the media guy. But I will speak to a project that we are doing now. Right now, we've been raising some funds for our next set of
Ah.
outreaches and the next project. And the
Mm-hmm.
callback, the response has been overwhelming. Like, because when it started, personally, I was like, but looking at World War III, people even want to give money. But beyond expectations, within the week, we had crossed about $3,000. And I was like, oh, that's good.
Nice.
And that really goes a long way in a city like
Mm-hmm.
Jos and stuff.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
Yeah.
the response. So, I haven't really gotten back response for the children, but the response from the people have been
Mm-hmm.
really, really, really more than it has been like over like the past, will I say, 2, 3, 4 years. And
Mm-hmm.
because we're having like this with the AI revolution, I am getting the sense that people are like, oh, are we smart enough already because people are questioning themselves like, are they smart enough? Because AI is doing things that they can do. So there is this dissatisfaction with where they are, and people are like, okay, you know what, let's get the children reading again so they are not worse off than we are. So the response has been amazing.
Exactly. Oh man, that's amazing. Talking about that
Yeah.
campaign, I think I've come across it and I'm happy to share that I've donated to the cause because I believe in what you guys are doing.
Thank you so
So
much.
yes, again, inspire, yeah, just all round is inspiring thing. So I hope that, like the work that you're doing, hopefully down the line with my library project, like it could go somewhere down there like that. So again, it's like when I get to that level, I'll be coming to you guys to ask, for example, how did you get to participate in this project? And like
Yeah,
for me to borrow from that, because again, it's like we walk so others behind us can run. So again, this is
definitely.
what happens, like the exchange of knowledge and experiences, and so that it's sort of like paving the way for the others. So again, incredibly proud of you guys, and I'm just super grateful that we got to have this wonderful conversation.
Oh, the pleasure is all mine. I'm so happy I could have it. Thank you so much. And this has been fun. And I don't want it to end, but because it's very fun to talk to you as a person, I feel like we'll have like great conversations about novels. But when that
I
draft
think
comes,
so.
that's where my brain even activates even more whenever there's a draft in front of me. So I look forward to it.
Thank you so much.
It's an honor to actually be sit down and be educated by you about like these things. So yeah.
Oh, you're so kind. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And so
Yeah.
I'll be going I will be getting off now. Have a lovely day, Brenda, and have a great week.
You too have a great rest of your afternoon, and it's been awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah, bye bye.
Bye bye.